Good morning. My name is Ron Bowles. I'm Director of Academic Affairs here at Justice Institute of British Columbia. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this morning and express my regrets that I'm not able to participate directly. I'm in Eastern Canada heading to run some workshops that are associated with the project I'll be talking about. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we meet today on unceded Central Coast Salish territory. I'd also like to express my gratitude to the Kikwa-Musqueam First Nations who have ties to this territory, and also acknowledge the unceded territory of all Central Coast Salish peoples. Over the next 15 or 20 minutes, what I'd like to do is to tell you a story about a research project that we're involved in, then pull out some ideas from that story with the goal of developing some takeaways. And the theme of this session is applied research. And why are we doing applied research? What do we get from it? How does it help us advance our disciplines? The story that I'm going to tell is about the growth of paramedicine and a particular research project that we're engaged in at JIBC. Paramedicine is relatively young, and in the last 50 or 60 years, the discipline has grown from individual ambulance operators, often situated in hospitals or funeral homes, into large, complex, dynamic systems that reach across regions and provinces that involve a variety of different ways of responding to patients. EMS systems and paramedic systems involve a variety of different stakeholders, everything from the practitioners themselves, represented through their professional associations and unions, to the ambulance service operators, regulators, educators, researchers. There's a variety of different stakeholders and groups that are involved in developing and maintaining paramedic practice. Paramedicine continues to grow, and in the last 10 years, there's been a tremendous growth in the number of roles and places that paramedics practice in. While ambulances are still the heart of paramedic practice, paramedics are now providing care in remote jurisdictions, in industry, through the military, and special operations, and providing care in the home. These changes create a number of challenges for the stakeholders that are leading the profession. And particularly in a time of evidence-informed decision-making, the question becomes, how do we get a hold of good and useful and reliable and accurate data? Intriguingly, paramedics are drowning in data. Every ambulance call generates a patient care record and a dispatch record, a number of hospital records. In addition, there are operational data that's being collected through a variety of forms, and there's research being conducted that are all adding to the body of information and data that are available to help stakeholders make decisions. But ironically, most of this data is siloed. It's collected locally or regionally, sometimes provincially. Very little data is available at the national level. And the data that is through groups like Canadian Institute of Health Informatics, CIHI, or StatsCan, tends to be very spotty. It's often not collecting a lot of data that's really useful to stakeholders, and there are large gaps in the data. Not everyone contributes to it. Another challenge that paramedicine faces is that a lot of the research that's being done, or that has been done, has typically been done by people from outside the discipline. Clinical research typically has been performed by emergency physicians and clinical researchers. Which leads to a project that we've been involved in at JIBC, the Standards and Taxonomies for Canadian Paramedic Information System. Truly one of the worst names I've ever come up with for a research project. The goal of this project is to develop standards to help develop a future national level information system. The project is federally funded through the Canadian Safety and Security Program and has a number of partners. We're working with BC Emergency Health Services, which is the lead government agency. Justice Institute is the administrative home and research lead for the project. We're working with Canadian Standards Association Group, Regional Paramedic Programs of Eastern Ontario, and Paramedic Chiefs of Canada, Paramedic Association of Canada, and the Canadian Organization of Paramedic Regulators. It's truly a partnership project with a lot of reach. The goal at the end of the day is to come up with a set of data standards and some guidelines that will help create a national information system. It's a 2-year, $2 million project with 2 parts, some applied research up front and then a consensus process to develop the standards in the second year. In the research side, we're meeting with individuals and stakeholder groups, trying to get their stories, identify what their data and information needs are, and then we're looking into the literature to describe key concepts in paramedicine. We'll bring all of that together, pull out what the characteristics of a national information system would be, how it might work, and what should be in it, and then use a census building process to develop the standards from that. It's a large, complex project with a lot of moving parts and involving a tremendous number of people. The goal at the end of the day, as I mentioned, is to develop standards for a national information system. We're going to do that by collecting 3 types of information. Data elements that would help the most number of stakeholders. What is the information that people really need to know about practice? What are the functional characteristics? How would a national information system work? And then underneath that, what are the main ideas? What are the terms and concepts and models? How do paramedics describe practice and how do they use language within their practice? We get that information from 2 sources. We're working with key informants through interviews and focus groups, and then we're working with literature and document analysis. From the key informants, we're asking them about their data needs, and from that we gather up all of the expressions that they give us. And through the literature and document analysis, we're pulling out any of the key terms or ideas that describe different parts of paramedic practice. The language from the key informants helps us to define the functional characteristics and identify the data elements. And then we're doing some neat stuff with the language and terminology at the bottom. We're looking for groups of common words and pulling together, to create models or taxonomies of key concepts. So within paramedic practice, paramedics have always responded to emergency calls and provide emergency and advanced care, and have always done interfacility transfers. With new roles, paramedics are providing home care, doing treat and release with definitive care, providing a variety of treat and refer options. All of these are different types of care that paramedics are now providing. And that becomes a model or a taxonomy that we can say, here's the types of things that paramedics do. The information standards will draw on the functional characteristics and data elements that we gather through the top end, and the definitions will be informed from the data that we collect on the bottom side through the document and literature analysis. As I said, this is a intriguing project. It's got a lot of uptake, a lot of interest, and it has the potential to be an important foundational piece of work at the national level. So how does this advance the discipline? Why are we doing this? What are we getting out of this? How does this help us and help the JI? Well, first and foremost, this project in particular is one that has a very definite practical application. We're defining and describing key concepts and key aspects of paramedic practice. This has immediate impact in helping to develop consistent approaches and common language between the different provinces. It has a more long-term impact in setting up a national information system that will further the cooperation and collaboration between different systems. And for us at the JI, it helps directly inform our curriculum. And it has the other benefit of getting us in contact with a variety of stakeholders around the country. But there's some other aspects of this project that are really intriguing as well. When I was younger, there used to be a number of raging debates about different types of beverages, particularly when low-calorie ones started coming out. And the question was, is this great taste or is this less filling? The debate itself isn't that important, but the idea here, and particularly in terms of research, is that people enter arguments from a particular perspective with a particular way of looking at things, and they often get very entrenched in those positions. And this really plays out in the research world. When most people think of research, they think of capital R research, big-time research, which typically comes from a hypothetical deductive model. We have a theory of practice, and then we pull some element out of that to test and see whether or not it works. So within a paramedic context, we can take something like cardiac arrest, and the question is, how do we actually improve care? Well, and improve outcome and success. So we might look at two things. We might say that maybe different drug therapies will get the heart going better and have better outcomes, or maybe getting defibrillation onto the scene quicker will increase survivability. So we develop an experiment for that. We go out and we collect a bunch of data and we take a look at it. And sometimes we look at the data and we go, yeah, this drug therapy is better than that drug therapy, and that's a wonderful thing. Sometimes we take a look at response times and go, that didn't have as big an impact as we thought it would. And you have to loop back and adjust your theory. Maybe CPR at the scene and better quality CPR would help, and we test that and find out that actually does significantly improve care. And this is how practice improves slowly, gradually over time. One of the challenges with this model, though, is that all of these studies start from a theoretical perspective. They always start from a place. And typically paramedic research has started, particularly research in the clinical practice, has come at the world through the lens of emergency medicine. And while that's good and that's effective, it's also very limiting in terms that you only see the things that you're looking for. One of the critiques of a lot of the cardiac arrest research that's done is that cardiac arrest makes up 1 or 2% of the ambulance calls that people do. What about the other 98%? How do we should be looking at some of those things. We should be looking at the practitioners. We should be looking at how shift patterns and affect their careers. How do we deal with the mental health issues that are endemic in all of the first responder communities? So again, one of the challenges that we need to look at is how do we look at paramedicine through broader lenses? In the last 15 years, paramedics have been entering graduate studies, and we've been developing a number of paramedic researchers. One of my laments is that we've had to do that, though, by going and getting our degrees in different disciplines. There's a group that started in Ontario, REACH is national now, called McNally Group. A number of graduate students and PhD paramedics that get together every couple of weeks and talk about research in paramedicine. Really interesting group, really great initiative. But there's an interesting aspect of that group, in that when you take a look at the bio page and go take a look at the degrees that these people have, the 26 people that are listed have degrees in 43 different topics and disciplines, ranging from the arts and sciences in very general ways to health disciplines, education, research, and health studies. 43 different ways of looking at the world. And some of these ways are very different ways of looking at the world. Informatics and epidemiology take a much more prescriptive and objective look at the world than people do that come from a sociological or women's studies or political science type background. And again, even more, of these 43 different ways of looking at the world, only 3 of them involve paramedic-related degrees. So while we're getting more paramedics engaged in research, they're still looking at it through other people's lenses, using other people's language and concepts and ways of looking at the world. This isn't just an outward-looking problem. Paramedicine also faces challenges looking inward, the Tonka toy dilemma. Paramedics typically respond to the patient's side in an ambulance. Sounds good. But one of the things that we run into is that there's different ways of even describing that. In BC, we call it working on car. In Alberta, they talk about being on the truck. In Quebec, they refer to it as faire de la route, going on the road, or être sur la route, being on the road, and refer to the ambulance as an ambo or camion. We can't even agree on what it is we call the vehicles we drive to the patient in, let alone other more important parts of practice. And this is a function of the way healthcare is set up in Canada, being a provincial jurisdiction. There are 13 provinces and territories. The federal government provides healthcare in a couple of different ways. So you have 14 jurisdictions, each with its own regulatory models, each with its own legislation, its different ways of providing ambulance care, of educating practitioners, licensing them, 14 different ways of doing everything in this business. So again, we're back to this challenge that when we try to do things at a national level, one, we're looking at the world through other people's lenses, and even when we try to look through our own lens, we can't even agree on what we call an ambulance. So how do we address that with research? Well, one of the first things that we can do, and one of the things that the Justice Institute has been looking at, is where does theory come from? Most of the disciplines in this building are disciplines which aren't represented in the university system, which don't have an academic home and don't have a lot of disciplinary research being done about them. And so one of the goals at Justice Institute has been to develop research bases for our disciplines, or look at how we can do that. And we looked at Wallace's Wheel of Science. It says, yes, experimental research is important, but those theories come from somewhere. When we have a theory of practice, that theory developed somehow, and how did it develop? And so the model that we've been using at Justice Institute sort of looks at 4 types of research. Let's start with field practice. Let's go out and talk to the people that are doing this. And let's just start with descriptive and exploratory work. What is it that people are doing? How do they do it? How do they describe it? What are the ideas behind that? From that, we can start to explore some of those concepts and develop explanatory models, which will lead to theories of practice that emerge from the practice of paramedicine, or the practice of policing, or from conflict resolution, or from any of the disciplines in our building, rather than being other people's ways of looking at things. We need to turn around and look at our own practice and develop our own theories of practice if we want to do a better job of that. This project explicitly does that by trying to get together stakeholders from around the country, from a variety of different stakeholder groups, to identify their information needs. A key aspect or a key goal of this project is to create conversation, to create collaboration, and develop a shared understanding of these core concepts and ideas. And we do that by working with stakeholder groups, both working with specific types of groups. So we've met with regulators, we've met with paramedic chiefs, we've met with researchers. We've also met with diverse groups that are from specific geographic areas. So we've had workshops in Alberta. We're conducting a workshop today in New Brunswick, and another one in Ottawa tomorrow. And we're bringing these people together. And the idea is to bring these people from their various perspectives and various backgrounds together, to look at these ideas, to look at the way we do things, and to start working towards a common way, a common language, a common taxonomy, a common way of describing the practice that we do. The last way that this project is advancing our discipline is by building capacity and experience, both internally at JIBC, but also with many of our partner groups and in the discipline more broadly. This is a cross-Canada initiative. The research team itself brings together a variety of people from across the country, from a number of different backgrounds. I'm the principal investigator. We've also got Kathy Harms, who's a co-investigator from Health Sciences here. We've got Joe Acker from BC Emergency Health Services, Chelsea Wilker from Saskatchewan representing the regulators, CSA Group in Toronto with Ron Myers and Cassandra Gila, Regional Paramedic Programs of Eastern Ontario, Penny Price and Mike Austin, Don Ottinger from Peterborough is representing Paramedic Chiefs, and Pierre Poirier representing the Paramedic Association of Canada. In addition, we're using sessional researchers, graduate students, and people that are just getting involved in the research world. We've got folks from Northern Lakes College, from the Alberta government, and from Ontario that are currently involved. More will be coming on board as this project goes. We've brought on 3 sessional researchers through JIBC, some of our sessional instructors that we're giving an opportunity to participate in research with. And in addition, our faculty at JIBC will be one of the focus groups that we talk to. Second way that we brought people together was to hold this expert working group, a stakeholder group, where we brought 20 people in from every region in the country and a variety of backgrounds again. The last several months we've been conducting workshops, over 100 participants, in, again, workshops that represent both geographic areas and specific workshop or specific stakeholder groups. We've also been doing knowledge disseminations through and data collection through things like the Women in EMS Leadership Symposium in Edmonton and EMS Research Day in Atlantic, Canada. And in the last phase of the research, we're just moving into interviews. We've already done interviews nationally and internationally with people from the United States, from Australia, from Quebec, from Saskatchewan, and we'll be interviewing about 20 different people. So this project brings together people from a variety of different backgrounds, a variety of different geographic locations. It gets them involved in the research process, and through our use of sessional researchers and graduate students, we're actually building capacity within our own student and faculty body here. So what are the takeaways? I told the story of the need that paramedics have in Canada for a national information system and the research project that we're involved in to build a basis for that. How does this advance the discipline? First, very explicitly through development of the standards and the models and taxonomies that will support that, and that will inform practice and inform our curriculum. It also advances our practice by bringing together diverse groups of stakeholders involved in paramedicine across the country to share their experience, their ideas, and to build a common understanding and a shared perspective of the world. And finally, we advance the disciplines through development of capacity, both internally through our students, our faculty, and our staff at Justice Institute, and in collaboration with our partners across the country. And with that, I will say thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to present on this project, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks very much.